Díobh Gachtaine agus Fáilte Arás. Today we're moving on to a brand new topic, and today we're going to be talking about something called decimals. Okay, so decimals are quite similar to things that we've been doing before, and if we have done some work on decimals before, but we're going to spend a couple of lessons just going through them a little bit more. So let's get started. So first things first, we're going to have a look at this bar. Okay, and this bar is divided into equal parts. So we're going to count up how many parts there are in this bar. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 equal pieces. Okay, so if there's 10 equal pieces, what is each one of those called? They're each called what in fractions? A tenth. Okay, so something is divided into 10 pieces. Each one of the pieces is a tenth. Okay, so we're going to label these here now. So each one of these is called a tenth. But we can call a tenth something else. Okay, so 1/10, we can write it a different way, and we can write it as 0.1. Okay, so decimals are another way of writing tenths. So 1/10 is the same as 0.1, and I'm going to explain that a little bit more. So 0.1, this means the 0 means the units. So the units are on this side. And when we have fractions, we only have a fraction of the number, don't we? We don't have whole numbers. So these are the whole numbers on this side. And when we have fractions, we might not have whole numbers. So if we're talking about 1/10, we definitely don't have a whole number there. We have a fraction of a number, isn't that right? So it's 0. The decimal point is there to separate the whole numbers from the fraction side. So on this side are the whole numbers, and this side is the fraction side, and all the decimal point does is separates the two. So you know which is which. Okay, so 0.1 is another way of saying that there's no units, there's no whole numbers, but there is something on the fraction sides. There's 1. And 1 is 1/10 when it comes to decimals. When you see a decimal, they are always talking about tenths. Always. Okay, so 0.1 has to be 1/10. Okay, if we had 0.2 down, how many tenths would that be? Remember, decimals are always tenths. Decimals are always tenths. So no whole numbers. We have a decimal point separating the whole numbers and the fractions. And 2 what? It's on the fraction side. 2/10. If I had 3/10, how would I write that down, do you think? Would there be any whole numbers? 3/10. Is there a whole number there? Nope. So we put down 0. And then what do we put down to separate our whole numbers and our fractions? A decimal point goes in between. Very good. So 0 point, and then how many tenths are there? 3. Okay, super. Here I have a few questions on the board, and we're going to help each other figure these out, okay? So we've done as far as 3/10 is 0.3 already. What is the decimal, do you think, for 4/10? Are there any whole numbers? No. So the 0 has to go here, and then that has to be separated by the decimal point. No whole numbers, but there are some fractions. There are 4/10. So what goes here? 0.4. Super, okay? And remember, when it comes to decimals, it always has to be what fraction? Tenths, always tenths, okay? So 4/10, 0.4. And if you were to see 0.4, you'd know that that is no whole numbers a decimal point, and the fractions here on this side, 4 tenths. It has to be 4 tenths because it's always tenths when it comes to decimals, okay? So 0.5 is what as a fraction? No whole numbers, but there are fractions. How many tenths? 5. Super. You're really catching on. Brilliant. Then we have 6 tenths is the same as 0.6. Super. Brilliant. Then we have 0.7 is the same as, well, we have no whole numbers. We have 7 in the fractions side. So it has to be 7 tenths. Yes, 7 tenths. Very good. Then 0.8 is the same as 8 tenths. Well done. 8 tenths. 9 tenths is the same as writing down what? No whole numbers, you're right. A decimal point separating the whole numbers from the fractions. And how many fractions, how many tenths are there? 9 tenths. Super. Now, this is the last one that I wanted to put in here, just because this would be a little bit tricky. 10 out of 10. 10 tenths. 10 tenths. If you had a chocolate bar and it had 10 squares in the chocolate bar, and you had all the squares together, you'd have one whole chocolate bar. So 10 tenths is the same as one whole, isn't it? So we have actually a number here. We have a whole. We have units. So 1 point. And then is there any left over? Is there any fractions left over? We have 10 out of 10. We have full marks. So do we have any fractions left over? No. So we write 10 out of 10 as 1.0 because that is one whole, because this is 1. 10 out of 10 is 1, and then there's no fractions left over. Okay, and that is the reason why you write 10 tenths as 1.0. Part of your work today, you're going to be asked to shade in certain fractions or certain decimal fractions of shapes. Okay, so that will be easy enough for you to do, but I just want to go through it. So here we have a shape, and it is divided into 10 pieces. It's divided into tenths. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sections, okay? And they're asking you to shade in 0.2. 0.2, but we know 0.2 is the same as how many tenths? It's the same as 2 tenths. 0.2 is the same as 2 tenths. Okay, so there I have my shape. It's in 10 pieces, and they're asking me to colour in 2 tenths. So all I have to do is shade in 2 bars. Okay, so I can choose whichever ones I like. I'm going to choose this one, shade it in, and I might choose this one. And there we have it. I've shaded in 0.2 or 2 tenths of the shape. So I don't think I need to go through too many more examples of that with you guys, because I feel like that's very straightforward. All you need to remember is 0.2 is 2 tenths, and when you have a shape that has 10 pieces in it, then all you have to do is shade in 2 tenths. The last part of your work today is this number line. And I wanted to explain it just in case anyone got a bit confused by looking at it. So this is exactly what you are going to have in your work. It's right here. You can see it here at the very bottom. So the number line is there on the bottom. I've just drawn it out on the board for you guys to see. So what it is that it has the tenths up at the top and then the decimals down at the bottom. So you have to say what the number is, whichever gap is missing, okay? So you have 1/10 and the decimal is missing. So 1/10 is the same as what as a decimal fraction or as a decimal? That's another thing as well. Sometimes decimals are called decimal fractions. So if you're ever asked for the decimal fraction, they're asking you for the decimal, okay? And the decimal fraction is the same thing. So decimal and decimal fraction are the same thing. So here we have the fraction, and down here we have the decimal or the decimal fraction, okay? So 1/10 is the same as what as a decimal fraction? 0.1. 0.1, and that's all you have to do. So that's all they're asking you to do in this, is they're asking you to write down the ones in tenths and write it down in decimals as well. 0.2 is the same as what's missing here, the tenths are missing. So 0.2 is the same as how many tenths? 2 tenths. And as you can see, it's going up, and it's going up here as well. Now we're going to skip here to the middle, okay? We have 0.5. Then we have, very curiously here, a half. A half, but a half isn't in tenths. That's not a tenth. But we know that 5/10 is missing there, because it's 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10. So 5/10 has to go here, and 5/10 is the same as a half. So you can call these the same name. It's either 5/10 or a half. And when we have 5/10, because you can only write decimals using tenths, that's why it's 0.5. So it can say a half here, but a half and 5/10 are the same thing. And when we talk about decimals, we always talk about the tenths. We always talk about tenths. So that's the reason why a half is the same as 0.5. Okay, then we have here 6/10 is the same as what as a decimal? 0.6. Then 0.7 is the same as how many tenths? 7/10. And I'm going to stop there because I don't want to do the whole lot of work for you. I know you're working with me, but I want you to do this by yourself on the sheet. So your work today is quite straightforward. It's pretty much everything that we were doing on the board already. Okay, so we have a few little bits here. The same thing that I explained to you, that this side is the whole numbers, then we have the decimal point, and then we have the tenths or the decimal fraction, okay? And then that is equal to the same thing in tenths. So 0.2 is the same as 2/10. We've gone through that already. Okay, then it's asking you here to convert the tenths into decimal fractions. So the first one you have up is 4/10. What's that as a decimal? That's what it's asking you, okay? You're going to be well able to do those because we've practiced them so much in this lesson. Then question 2 is colour 0.7 of the shape. So you have to colour in 7/10. Then it says colour in 0.4 of the shape. You should be well able for that. For question 4, you're converting them the other way around. So they give you the decimal fraction, but you have to write the decimal fraction as tenths. Then it says what decimal fraction is shaded. So you have to figure that out and write it in. Now it's asking you for the decimal fraction. So what decimal fraction is shaded? So say for instance it's question 2. What decimal fraction is shaded? The answer is 0.2. Okay. If they ask you for a decimal fraction and you give it in tenths, that's wrong. Okay, they say decimal fraction. If they want it in tenths, they'll say what's the fraction. But if the word decimal is mentioned whatsoever, you have to use numbers with a decimal point. Okay, big clue. So you really need to read your questions properly. Okay, so you have 0.2 and then it asks you for C, colour the amount shown. And then you have to colour the amount shown, which you're well able to do. And we went through the last thing there just on the board. So there we have it. That's our lesson done for today. I'm sure you guys will get along totally fine with your work. And I will see you guys again tomorrow for another decimal maths lesson. Slán!